You thought the pain would never end, that their memory would be a permanent shadow over your life, dictating your happiness and stealing your peace. But one day, the heavy chains of the past quietly slip away. How do you know you've finally broken free? Here are the signs of true Stoic healing. There is a specific kind of quiet that follows the departure of someone you loved deeply. It is not a peaceful silence. It is a deafening void. When someone you thought you could never forget leaves your life, whether through a breakup, a falling out, or the painful drift of time, they take a piece of your envisioned future with them. In the immediate aftermath, the mind becomes a torture chamber of its own design. Every street corner, every song on the radio, every notification on your phone becomes a phantom, a painful reminder of what was and what can no longer be. You wake up in the morning, and for a fleeting, merciful second, you forget they are gone. Then, reality crashes down, and the weight of their absence settles on your chest all over again. For a long time, you believe this is just how the rest of your life will feel. You believe that you are irreparably broken. But Stoicism, the ancient Greco-Roman philosophy practiced by emperors and slaves alike, teaches us a profound truth about human suffering. We suffer far more in imagination than in reality. The pain you feel months or years after a separation is no longer inflicted by the person who left. It is inflicted by you. It is the result of holding on to a ghost, fighting against the reality of the present moment, and demanding that the universe conform to your desires rather than accepting it as it is. Healing from someone you thought you could never forget is not about erasing your memory. It is not about eternal sunshine or forced amnesia. It is a slow, deliberate, and often painful process of philosophical alchemy. It is the process of taking the raw, agonizing material of heartbreak and transmuting it into wisdom, resilience, and profound inner peace. It is the realization that your mind is your own empire, and you have the power to lower the drawbridge and cast out the invaders of your peace. The journey toward this freedom is subtle. It does not happen overnight. There is no grand ceremony, no sudden lightning bolt of clarity. Instead, it happens in quiet, uncelebrated moments. You begin to notice small shifts in your behavior, in your thoughts, and in your physical reactions to the world. Here is the first major sign that the Stoic process of healing has taken root in your soul. Sign 1. The severance of the external gaze. You no longer check on their life. In the modern age, we are cursed with the illusion of omnipresence. Through the glowing rectangles in our pockets, we can peer into the lives of people who are thousands of miles away, and more dangerously, into the lives of people who are no longer meant to be in our own. In the depths of heartbreak, checking on the person who hurt you becomes an addiction. You scroll through their social media. You ask mutual friends about them. You look for breadcrumbs of their existence to prove that they are still real, that the connection wasn't entirely a dream. You look to see if they are hurting as much as you are. You look to see if they have moved on. There is only one way to happiness, and that is to cease worrying about things which are beyond the power of our will. Epictetus, a philosopher who spent much of his life as a slave, understood the fundamental difference between what is our own and what is not. He built the foundation of his philosophy on the dichotomy of control. When you obsessively check on someone who is gone, you are violently throwing your energy into the realm of things you cannot control. You cannot control who they spend their time with, how they feel, what they post, or whether they regret losing you. By attaching your peace of mind to their current state of being, you willingly hand over the keys to your happiness to a ghost. You enslave yourself. The first sign of true healing is the quiet, resolute cessation of this behavior. It is not born out of a sudden, dramatic declaration that you will never look again, followed by white-knuckling through the urge. No, the true Stoic shift is far more profound. You simply lose the desire to look. You wake up one day and realize that knowing what they are doing no longer serves you. You recognize that every time you seek out information about them, you are willingly drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. The urge to check their profile, to drive past their house, to ask a friend how they are doing fades away, replaced by a powerful indifference. This is the manifestation of Stoic discipline. You have realized that your attention is your most valuable resource, and you refuse to spend another ounce of it on an investment that has already bankrupted you. You begin to pull your energy backward, retreating from the external world of their life and reinvesting it into the internal world of your own. You accept that their path has diverged from yours, and their journey is no longer your concern. This severance of the external gaze is the first breath of true freedom. It is the moment you stop bleeding out, patch the wound, and decide to live for yourself again. As you stop feeding the ghost with new information, the landscape of your mind begins to change. However, the true battleground of healing is not just in preventing new injuries. It is in dealing with the scars that have already formed. The memories. When a deep attachment is severed, memories act as hidden landmines. You can be walking through a perfectly ordinary Tuesday, feeling relatively okay, and suddenly a smell, a phrase, or a quality of light in the late afternoon triggers a memory so vivid it drops you to your knees. Your chest tightens, your breath catches, and for a terrifying moment, you are pulled right back into the epicenter of the grief. The unhealed mind looks at these memories through a lens of catastrophic loss. It whispers, "Look at what you had. Look at how happy you were. You will never have this again." It weaponizes nostalgia against you. Nostalgia is a masterful liar. It edits out the arguments, the fundamental incompatibilities, the cold nights, and the moments of profound loneliness within the relationship. It presents a highlight reel, bathed in a golden, impossible light, and demands that you mourn it. The Stoics knew that memory, left unchecked, is a tyrant. Daniel Joseph, the Roman emperor, often wrote in his meditations about the practice of objective representation. He would strip things of their romanticized narratives to see them for what they truly were. A vintage wine was just fermented grape juice. A purple royal robe was just sheep's wool, dyed with shellfish blood. Healing requires applying this exact same objective representation to your memories. You must strip away the golden filter of nostalgia and see the relationship, the person, and the past for exactly what it was. Nothing more, nothing less. As this Stoic practice takes hold, the second and third signs of healing emerge. Sign 2. The memories remain, but the venom is gone. Emotional neutrality. Healing does not mean forgetting. It is a terrible, culturally reinforced misconception that in order to truly heal from someone, you must somehow wipe them from your mental hard drive entirely. If you lived with someone, loved them deeply, and shared a significant chapter of your life alongside them, they are inextricably woven into the very fabric of your history. Attempting to force yourself to forget them is a psychological war against reality, a war that the Stoic knows you will always lose. The harder you try to suppress a thought, the more intensely it dominates your subconscious mind. It is a ridiculous thing for a man not to fly from his own badness, which is indeed possible, but to fly from other men's badness, which is impossible. Daniel Joseph. The second definitive sign of profound healing is that the memories still exist, but they have been entirely drained of their emotional venom. You can think of the person, you can randomly recall a spontaneous trip you took together, or a private joke you once shared, and your nervous system no longer plummets into a state of shock. Your heart rate remains remarkably steady. Your hands do not shake. Your chest does not tighten with that familiar, suffocating panic. The memory successfully transforms from an open, bleeding wound into a closed, pale scar. You reach a state of what the ancient Stoics called apatheia, not the modern, cynical definition of apathy, which implies a depressing lack of care or numbness, but the true ancient definition, a state of being completely free from uncontrolled, destructive passions. When you finally achieve this equilibrium, you can walk past the specific restaurant where you had your first date, or hear your song playing faintly in a grocery store, and simply observe the fact. You think, that is where we had our first date, without the immediate, catastrophic follow-up thought of, and my life is entirely ruined because they are gone. You have successfully and surgically separated the objective fact of the historical memory from the subjective, agonizing judgment that originally caused you pain. The ghost has become just a photograph resting on a dusty shelf, visible, undeniably present in the room of your mind, but entirely incapable of reaching out to harm you. You acknowledge the past without letting it dictate the emotional weather of your present, mastering your internal reactions and reclaiming your peace. Sign 3. You lay down your arms. You stop arguing with the past. When we are deeply, profoundly hurt by someone we loved, our minds often transform into perpetual, inescapable courtrooms. In the quiet hours of the night, we put the person who left on the witness stand of our imagination. We cross-examine them with relentless precision. We deliver passionate, flawless monologues about exactly how they wronged us, how severely they misunderstood us, and how they ultimately failed our bond. We replay trivial conversations from 3 years ago, finally coming up with the perfect, cutting response that we are absolutely certain would have changed the entire outcome. We bargain with the past, desperately trying to solve a complex puzzle that has already been glued together and framed. This relentless mental time travel is agonizingly exhausting. More importantly, it is the ultimate rejection of the Stoic principle of amor fati, the unconditional love of one's fate. To actively resist the past is to demand that the impossible occur. The past is carved in unyielding stone. The Stoics understood that not even the gods possess the power to alter what has already happened. Therefore, every single ounce of energy you spend arguing with history, wishing the circumstances were different, or painstakingly plotting a hypothetical scenario where things worked out, is vital energy directly stolen from your actual, breathing life. You are fighting a war against a ghost on a battlefield that no longer exists. The third definitive sign that you are finally healing is the permanent adjournment of this internal courtroom. You stop arguing with the past. You consciously lay down your heavy arms. You reach a profound, unshakable realization. It happened exactly the way it happened, and it could not have happened any other way. If they were truly meant to stay, they would be standing beside you. If you were meant to say something different in that final argument, you would have said it. You finally accept the harsh but liberating truth that the idealized version of the story, where they didn't leave, where they didn't betray your trust, or where the relationship didn't eventually break down, simply does not exist anywhere outside of your own imagination. It is complete fiction. By fully accepting this, you free yourself from the agonizing, suffocating burden of what if. You realize you no longer need them to understand your side of the story. You no longer need them to miraculously admit they were wrong. You no longer require the universe to retroactively validate your pain. You look back at the past, embracing all its messiness, its heartbreak and its cold finality, and you firmly state, so be it. This acceptance is never a passive, defeated resignation. It is an active, deeply powerful embrace of reality. It is the ultimate Stoic victory over the illusion of control, allowing you to finally redirect your entire focus toward the only domain you actually command, the present moment. When our lives become deeply entangled with another person, the boundaries of our identity begin to blur. We start to rely on them not just for companionship, but for validation, for our sense of worth, and for our emotional stability. In Stoic terms, we allow an external force to breach our inner citadel. The inner citadel, a concept popularized by Daniel Joseph, is the fortress of your mind. It is the core of your being, the place where your reason, your virtue, and your true self reside. The Stoics believed that while the external world could ravage your body, steal your wealth, and ruin your reputation, your inner citadel could remain utterly impenetrable. But only if you guarded the gates. When we give someone our heart, without maintaining the sovereignty of our mind, we hand them the keys to our citadel. If they choose to leave, they don't just take their presence away. It feels as though they take our foundation with them. We are left feeling empty, lost, and fundamentally broken because we outsourced our stability to a temporary, external variable. Healing is the process of evicting the ghosts from your citadel, changing the locks, and rebuilding the walls brick by brick. It is the transition from external dependency back to internal self-sufficiency. As you progress on this journey, the focus shifts entirely from the person you thought you couldn't forget, back to the only person you are guaranteed to spend the rest of your life with, yourself. This internal reconstruction brings about the next pivotal signs of healing. Sign 4. The abandonment of the closure. Myth, self-sourced resolution. Society feeds us a dangerous myth about heartbreak, the myth of closure. We are told that in order to truly move on, we need one final conversation. We need the other person to look us in the eye and explain exactly why they stopped loving us. We need them to apologize for the pain they caused. We need them to read the long, desperate letter we wrote at 3 a.m. so they finally understand. This desire for closure is a trap. It is a disguised refusal to accept reality. It places the power of your healing squarely in the hands of the very person who broke you. If you believe you cannot heal until they give you an explanation, you remain their prisoner long after they have walked away. No person has the power to have everything they want, but it is in their power not to want what they haven't got, and to cheerfully put to good use what they do have. Selene. The Stoic understands that seeking external closure is a fool's errand. Even if you get the conversation, the explanation will never be enough. It will never satisfy the ego's demand to be loved and chosen. The reason they left ultimately does not matter. The only objective fact that matters is that they left. The fourth sign that you are healing is when you completely abandon the pursuit of external closure. You realize that closure is not something someone else can hand to you. It is something you must grant yourself. You find your own closure in the silence. You find it in the realization that someone's inability to see your worth does not decrease your value. You find it by looking in the mirror and saying, "I do not need an apology to heal. I do not need an explanation to move forward. The disrespect was the closure. The departure was the closure." When you self-source your resolution, you reclaim all the power you gave away. You are no longer waiting in the lobby of your own life for someone else to give you permission to enter. You stand up, you brush yourself off, and you open the door yourself. You realize that your character, your virtue, and your capacity to love were never dependent on them. They were yours before the relationship, and they remain yours after it. Sign 5. The transformation of grief into deep gratitude, amor fati in action. The final stage of completely rebuilding your inner citadel is perhaps the most difficult to achieve, yet it is undeniably the most liberating. It serves as the ultimate test of a practicing Stoic. In the beginning stages of your heartbreak, your thoughts toward this person were likely consumed entirely by blinding grief, sharp betrayal, deep anger, or a desperate, unyielding yearning. You naturally viewed the relationship and its subsequent demise as a catastrophic tragedy, a personal failure, or a monumental waste of your precious time. You may have even cursed the universe for bringing them into your life, only to tear them away so violently. But as the defensive walls of your mind grow fortified and impenetrable, as the venom fully drains from your memories, and as you realize you are still standing firmly on your own 2 feet, a profound, almost miraculous shift in your perspective occurs. You stop looking at the loss as a massive deduction from your life's overall value, and you begin to view it through the lens of ancient wisdom, as a necessary, rigorous education. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Daniel Joseph. The 5th definitive sign of genuine, deep-rooted healing is the ability to look back at the entirety of the relationship and explicitly the painful, messy end of it, with a profound sense of genuine gratitude. This is not some form of toxic positivity that actively ignores or minimizes the sheer agony you went through. Rather, it is a deep, philosophical appreciation for the necessary shaping of your character. You realize that this specific heartbreak was exactly the crucible you needed to forge an infinitely stronger, more self-reliant version of yourself. If they hadn't left, you would not have been violently forced to discover your own latent resilience. If they hadn't broken your heart, you would never have learned how to meticulously mend it yourself. The crushing, silent loneliness taught you how to be your own best company, miraculously transforming fearful isolation into peaceful solitude. The betrayal or abandonment taught you the absolute necessity of trusting your own intuition and anchoring your self-worth entirely internally. The entire grueling experience acted as a sculptor's chisel, painstakingly chipping away the fragile, dependent, and fearful parts of your ego, revealing a stronger, wiser, and far more grounded individual underneath. You finally understand that the person you thought you could never forget was never meant to be your final destination. They were a necessary bridge. They were a vital, albeit painful, chapter in the vast, continually unfolding book of your life. You begin to feel immense gratitude for the time you shared, the beautiful lessons you learned, and yes, even the profound pain they caused, because every single ounce of it contributed directly to the person you are becoming today. You look at your scars not as ugly marks of permanent damage, but as hard-won medals of a fierce battle survived. You fully embody amor fati. You love your fate, completely and unconditionally, because it is unequivocally yours. When you have successfully rebuilt your inner citadel, reclaimed your emotional sovereignty, and transformed the raw, agonizing grief of your loss into a quiet, enduring gratitude, you will inevitably face a new, insidious challenge. It is the challenge of navigating the present world. When a profound relationship ends, especially with someone you genuinely believed you would never forget, the person who departed often leaves behind something far more dangerous than simple memories. They leave behind a ghost. They leave an idealized phantom that takes up permanent, uninvited residence in the corridors of your mind. In the long, echoing aftermath of a devastating loss, this phantom naturally morphs into the ultimate impossible benchmark against which you begin to measure everything and everyone else in your life. The human brain, in its desperate attempt to make sense of loss, curates a museum of perfection. It takes the flawed, complex, and messy human being who left you and completely sanitizes them. It edits out their selfishness, their emotional unavailability, the bitter arguments, and the fundamental incompatibilities that led to the fracture. Instead, it presents you with a flawless silhouette of your highest highs. Because of this mental trickery, you hold your present reality hostage to a dead past. If you meet someone new, the phantom immediately whispers in your ear, "They don't laugh like he did." If you visit a breathtaking new city, the phantom points out from the shadows, "She would have loved this view. It's a shame she isn't here." Even in moments of profound solitary peace, when you are simply drinking your morning coffee in the sunlight, the phantom is there, casting a subtle grey shadow over your joy, reminding you that your current happiness is somehow defective or incomplete, simply because it lacks the presence of the one you lost. This constant, involuntary comparison is a relentless thief of joy. It is a psychological self-flagellation that actively keeps the wound open, tearing at the stitches long after the blade has been safely removed. The Stoics recognized this deeply self-destructive tendency of the human mind to perpetually look backward, ignoring the vivid, breathing richness of the present moment. True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future, not to amuse ourselves with either hopes or fears, but to rest satisfied with what we have, which is sufficient. For he that is so wants nothing. Selene wrote extensively about the folly of living in the past or the future, recognizing that our perception of time is often our greatest source of misery. He warned that the mind, when unanchored from the present reality, becomes a restless, miserable wanderer. To constantly compare the people standing right in front of you to an idealized, heavily edited version of someone who is gone is to commit a grave injustice. It is an injustice to the people trying to love you now, who are being judged against an invisible standard, and it is a profound injustice to yourself. You are comparing breathing, flawed, beautiful reality to a flawless, untouchable fiction. The phantom is perfect precisely because it does not exist. It cannot make mistakes, it cannot disappoint you, it cannot grow distant, and it cannot trigger your insecurities, because it is merely a projection of your own lingering longing. As the Stoic principles of objective representation and amor fati take a deeper, more permanent root in your consciousness, a profound shift occurs in how you experience the world. The ghost begins to lose its absolute authority over your perceptions. You realize that holding on to this phantom benchmark is not a mandatory symptom of love. It is an active choice. It is an ongoing rebellion against the reality of the present moment. This awakening leads to the sixth definitive sign that the heavy chains of the past have finally been shattered. Sign 6. The silence of the phantom. You stop comparing the present to the past. You know you are experiencing the deepest levels of fundamental healing when you can live entirely in a moment of joy, connect with a new person, or embark on a new adventure and notice a sudden, beautiful absence. The phantom is utterly silent. The nagging compulsion to compare your present, unfolding reality to the ghost of what you lost has completely evaporated. This is a quiet, yet monumental, philosophical victory. You sit across from someone new, and instead of measuring their humor, their intellect, or their smile against the silhouette of your past love, you see them exactly as they are. You appreciate their unique quirks, their distinct perspective, and the novel, uncharted energy they bring into your life. Without demanding, they fill a hollow mold left behind by someone else. You begin to understand that love, connection, and joy are not finite resources that were hoarded and taken away by the person who left. They are ever-present capacities within yourself, waiting patiently to be awakened by new experiences and new people. When you achieve this state, you embody the Stoic virtue of wisdom, phronesis, the ability to navigate complex situations logically, calmly, and with a fiercely clear view of reality. You see with total clarity that your past relationship was a singular, unrepeatable event in the timeline of your life. It was a beautiful, complicated, and sometimes painful song that has definitively ended. To demand that the rest of your life play the exact same melody is a form of madness. You finally become willing and even excited to listen to entirely new music. Furthermore, this profound cessation of comparison extends inward, applying to your own self-image. During the absolute depths of heartbreak, you constantly compare your current, grieving, exhausted self to the happy, vibrant self you were when you were with them. You mourn the loss of who you were in their presence just as much as you mourn them. But as you cross the threshold of healing, you stop trying to resurrect that old version of yourself. You recognize the wisdom of Heraclitus, a heavy influence on the Stoics, who stated that no man ever steps in the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and he is not the same man. You embrace the new version of yourself, the one painstakingly forged in the quiet, lonely, devastating hours of rebuilding. You realize that you are perhaps a little more guarded, but vastly more resilient, perhaps a little less naive, but infinitely wiser and more grounded. You completely stop looking backward to find your identity. You stand firmly, solidly in the present, deeply rooted in the person you have fought so incredibly hard to become. The phantom benchmark shatters into 1,000 pieces, and for the first time in a very long time, you are entirely free to experience the breathtaking beauty of the present moment without the heavy, suffocating filter of the past. There is a final, formidable wall that stands between you and complete liberation. It is a wall you built yourself, stone by painful stone, during the darkest days of your heartbreak. When we are shattered by someone we thought we would never lose, the brain's primal defense mechanisms go into overdrive. The pain of the separation is so acute, so devastating to our psychological equilibrium that the mind vows, never again. We construct a massive, invisible fortress around our inner citadel. We pull up the drawbridge, drain the moat, and station armed guards at the gates of our hearts. We decide that the cost of profound connection is simply too high. We become cynical. We label vulnerability as foolishness. We keep people at a safe, calculated distance, ensuring that no one ever gets close enough to inflict that level of devastation upon us again. We confuse isolation with strength, but Stoicism is not a philosophy of emotional suppression or fearful isolation. To be a true Stoic is not to be a cold, unfeeling stone, impervious to the world. It is quite the opposite. The Stoics believed in sympatheia, the profound interdependence and interconnectedness of all humanity. They believed we were made for cooperation, for community, and for love. Epictetus provided one of the most powerful and challenging metaphors for love and loss in all of philosophy. He said that when you kiss your child, your sibling, or your friend, you should remind yourself that you are kissing a mortal. You should remind yourself that they are a fragile, temporary loan from the universe, and that they can be called back at any moment. To the modern ear, this sounds morbid, even cynical. But Epictetus's true intention was entirely liberating. He was trying to teach us how to love fiercely, deeply, and completely, without the desperate, suffocating grip of attachment. When you accept the fundamental impermanence of the people you love, you do not love them less. You love them more bravely. You love them with the acute, burning appreciation of someone who knows that every single moment is a gift that cannot be guaranteed tomorrow. Building a fortress around your heart doesn't protect you from pain. It only guarantees that you will suffer the quiet, agonizing pain of a life half-lived. True Stoic courage is not the absence of fear. It is the willingness to walk out of the fortress, stand in the open field of life, and say to the universe, I know that I am mortal. I know that everything I love will eventually be lost to time, distance, or death. And yet I choose to love anyway. This leads us to the seventh and final sign that you have completely, entirely, and victoriously healed from the person you thought you could never forget. Sign 7. The courage to leave the gates open. You are unafraid to lose again. The ultimate proof of your healing is not that you have forgotten them. It is not that you harbor a burning hatred for them. It is not that you have replaced them with someone new. The ultimate proof of your healing is that you are no longer afraid. You reach a point of supreme psychological sovereignty, where you realize that you survived the absolute worst-case scenario. The thing you dreaded most, the departure of the person you believed was your entire world, actually happened. It tore you apart. It drove you to the edge of your sanity. It plunged you into the darkest depths of despair. And yet, here you are. You are still breathing. The sun still rose. Your heart, though scarred, is still beating. You realize that the devastation did not kill you. It fortified you. When this profound truth settles into your bones, the fortress walls begin to crumble. You realize that you do not need the armor of cynicism anymore, because your strength does not come from keeping people out. Your strength comes from the absolute certainty that you can survive it if they leave. This is the manifestation of the highest Stoic ideal, Stoic equanimity. You look at the prospect of new love, new friendships, and new attachments, and you do not tremble. You leave the gates of your citadel open. You welcome people in. You allow yourself to care, to invest, and to be deeply, radically vulnerable, because you are no longer terrified of the cost. If someone enters your life and chooses to stay, you celebrate it as a beautiful, preferred indifferent. You enjoy their company, you cherish their presence, and you give them the best of your character. But if one day they choose to pack their things and walk out the gate, you will not collapse. You will stand in the doorway, watch them go, and quietly say, "Thank you for the time we shared. I return you to the universe." You know that your inner citadel is self-sustaining. Your happiness, your virtue, and your peace are entirely in your own hands. The person you thought you could never forget was the ultimate catalyst for this awakening. They were the fire that burned away the illusions of your dependency. They broke you, yes, but in the breaking, they forced you to discover that you were made of iron. You have navigated the labyrinth of grief and emerged into the clear, blinding light of philosophical freedom. You are no longer a prisoner of the past. You are a sovereign ruler of your present, bravely facing the future, anchored by the unshakable knowledge that no matter what the universe takes from you, it can never take yourself. Healing from a profound loss is not about forgetting. It is about transforming pain into unshakable Stoic power. When you stop checking their life, neutralize your memories, abandon the myth of closure, and bravely open your heart to the present, you have won the ultimate victory. You have reclaimed your inner citadel. If this Stoic journey resonated with your soul, please like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to our channel for more ancient wisdom to conquer your modern life. Stay strong and keep the gates of your mind guarded.